It's President's Week in the British Columbia Football Conference, and we're actually at the annual general meeting of the conference today, and we're talking football with VI Raiders President Kabel Atwall. Thanks for doing this, Kabel.
No problem.
Don't sound so excited, Kabel.
Not used to being in front of the camera.
The joys of being a president, right? You should have stayed vice president. You wouldn't be having to worry about this
Well,
stuff.
they'd probably send me anyways because I live here.
So it's funny. Let's talk about that first off. You mentioned you live here, so you're the president of the VI Raiders, but you are actually based out of Richmond.
Yeah, I first got introduced to the Raiders when I took a job on Vancouver Island. It was based out of Nanaimo, and actually when I went over, I didn't even know the Raiders existed. And then I maintained my home in Vancouver, and I was just commuting back and forth, spending the majority of the week there. And then they recruited my son, and I found out who the Raiders were, and they sucked me in, and they haven't let me go since then.
So back when you said they recruited Ranji, your son, let's go back in time. What year?
That was 2007. That was his first year.
Okay. So, and you were actually in Nanaimo that year or previous to that?
I moved to Nanaimo in July of 2006.
Okay.
And we had a land development company, and we had projects up and down the island. We just figured Nanaimo was the central place to be, and so it just worked out coincidentally from that perspective.
So it's interesting when you said you're on the island and you didn't even know the Raiders existed. And this is one of the things that in junior football we're struggling all the time in British Columbia to get the average football fan knowing who we are. So when you say you didn't know, you just really had not heard much about the Raiders in spite of their success.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about the Raiders, and to be honest with you, we're in Richmond. You don't get a lot of football news as to what's happening in the rest of the province in Richmond, just because it's a little bit insular from the football scene. But all our three sons played football in Richmond, but no one ever mentioned the Raiders. We were aware of the Langley Rams, or I guess whatever they were called, the South Surrey Rams at the time, and we had heard about the Renfrew Trojans, but I didn't know anything about the Raiders at that point.
So talking about the visibility of the Raiders today and what you know about the British Columbia Football Conference since you've been involved, and I may be putting you on the spot here. We didn't script any of our questions, of course, but what do you think the teams in the conference have to do to raise the visibility, to get the average football fan knowing a little bit more about the product and getting fans out to the
Well,
parks?
I think it's just, you can't just look at junior football in isolation. I mean, look at the BC Lions, and they're having the same issues of getting people engaged with the sport. It seemed to have peaked a little bit, then it started going down, but now it seems to be coming back up, and I think it just comes back to awareness. More people are aware of or making more people aware of the options that they have in terms of football. It just isn't high school or midget and university or nothing. I mean, a lot of people don't know there's a league in between those, and I think we're getting to the point where teams are becoming more aware. You see information, I guess, through your efforts to some degree in the Vancouver Province and the Sun. You see it on mentions on TSN. I think that just all helps, and I think it's just the maturation of the football community as well.
So you were involved with the Raiders, at least as a fan, back in their heyday when they were such a dominant football team. What's different? I mean, you're just a couple years removed, or a year removed from a BC championship, but those days of the Raiders rolling through the conference the way they did, what's changed between then and now?
Well, I think the big difference is the rest of the teams have caught up to us as well. I mean, we did a lot of things. We were first in doing a lot of things, such as the scholarship program and the broadcasts and whatnot. Now everybody's doing it, so everybody sort of caught up to us, and now it's a matter of us catching up to them, or we're sort of more on a level playing field from that perspective. We're also a new team, and the personalities we had involved in that team lent itself to good recruiting and stuff, and we've got to get back to that. I mean, it's just, with the drop in numbers, it just becomes more and more difficult to recruit. CIS or U Sport now are taking more and more players, so it's just a matter of just working harder at it, and that's what we've had to do.
As we mentioned, you're in Richmond, but you've kept your ties, you've maintained your ties with the Raiders. Refresh my memory, how many years have you been president now?
This is hopefully tomorrow will be my fourth.
Or hopefully not, maybe?
Hopefully not. It's a double-edged sword there.
I don't think anybody, I think fans would, or parents would be shocked to know how much volunteer time presidents actually put into
Oh, I
these
know.
programs.
When I moved back home to Vancouver to work out of the house there, we still have projects on the island, so I'm still going back and forth. So I'm still involved from a physical perspective in Nanaimo, but I was just going through my computer and deleting emails, and I think 80% of them were football related as opposed to anything else.
It is time consuming. So you're in Richmond, you're back and forth from the island, but once your son graduated, it would have been really hard and really natural, and most people would have just walked away. And so many parents do, and that's what I think hurts programs. Why is Kabel Atwall still involved with the Raiders? Why are you so passionate about it?
Well, they did a lot for my son. They did a lot for our family. He became a great source of entertainment and a kinship that developed there from not only Ranji but his brothers and my wife as well. So that continued on, and I was still in Nanaimo and working there, so it just was a natural just to keep going. I mean, I think if you get something out of something, you should give something back to it as well. And so I've just continued on. I enjoy it as well. So I mean, there's that factor. Some days you're ripping your hair out, wondering why the hell you're doing it, but I enjoy doing it, and just seeing the satisfaction of seeing players move on and graduate and come back as young men. That's also rewarding too.
Let's talk about the VI Raiders of today. Tell me a little bit about your board. I hate to have you single out names because you're going to forget somebody. You're going to be kicking yourself. But let's talk about the board of directors and the functioning of the football team today. And it's kind of use this as a commercial to somebody that might be watching it to say, I should get involved with this football team.
Well, it's coincidental that we're having this conversation today because our AGM is tomorrow. So the board members I'm talking about might not all be there tomorrow. But generally, I think we've got a smaller board. I think we have 9 people on the board. And compared to some of the other teams, it's fairly small. All are very hardworking, all have their little areas of expertise, and they work on those ends of it. I think the philosophy we have that sort of came from the football field is it's a family, so we all work together. So there's not one person doing one thing, we're all pitching in to help. One may be in charge of one thing, but the others are all used as resources as well. And so that's sort of our philosophy in the board. We're hoping for board members because you can never have enough people to help out, and it's also important to get new ideas and fresh ideas from people because you have the same 7-8 people on the board the whole time for the last 6 years. You're just going to go forward with those same ideas. If you get some new people, they look at things a little bit differently, and a lot of it might be helpful in terms of moving forward as well. So we're looking forward to actually getting a few new members on the board as we move forward.
Okay. What's old is what's new again. 2 young men that have a long history with your football team as players and then as coaches are transitioning into two new roles this year. We've talked to them, but let's have you talk a little bit about your new GM and your new head coach, and just talk about Josh and Curtis.
Right, as you said, I mean, the older we get, the younger we get, and I think that's a great transition point for us because, you know, the team's only been around since 2005, so our oldest alumni are you're seeing reflected in Curtis and Josh, and they're just getting to the points in their lives where they can start giving back because they've got themselves established with jobs and families and everything else. So that's great. You won't find two more passionate people than those 2 are. Josh, you know, wears his emotions on his sleeve, but he's the hardest work you'll find, and he's got a great rapport with kids, and he understands the business end of things, so he was just a natural fit. Curtis, being a teacher and a young man that can sell his message and and has high moral values is really good for us as well. We know they'll be around for the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years if we don't burn them out by then. But it gives us a great foundation in terms of moving forward. Just with them alone, we're getting more alumni getting more engaged with the team as well, because they can identify with these players more than they could with people like me, who are just some old guy that sit on the
Getting
sideline.
older every year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a great start for us. I mean, you look at the coaching staff they've assembled, it's young, but it's a Raider coaching staff, and that's part of our philosophy. Is we want to grow from within. We want to promote our own people, give them opportunities first, and even if you leave town and come back, you're still welcome. And that's one thing we've always stressed, and we want to continue forward, and those two in that position just solidifies that whole philosophy.
We talk about, in British Columbia, we always talk about the lack of high school and community football, and certainly that's an issue in Nanaimo.
Right.
But although you don't have a lot of football in terms of numbers, you've got very successful high school football there.
Right.
What's the key to, and maybe this is a hard question, Kabel, but what's the key to keeping those kids at home and keeping the Raiders organization top of mind, so they're the first team they want to play for, rather than maybe jumping off to your sport right
it's
away?
the interaction with the high schools that we have in the area between NDSS and Barsby and Bolinas. Those are the three that we can really tap into, and just making them aware, inviting them to the games, coming to the games. The success we've had obviously translates to them wanting to come and play for us. The fact that they can stay at home, great timing.
We'll interrupt you. We're actually our AGM is at McLeod Athletic Park in Langley, and if you know the stadium, one of the cool things about it, it's right next to an airport, but it's not interview friendly.
Right. So now I forget what I was going to say.
We're talking about getting the high school kids out, and
they're coming out, and we have OTAs, which high school kids are welcome to attend. In fact, we had our first one last Monday, and a great turnout of around 30, 40 kids, I think it was, and probably 10 or 12 are high school kids and stuff. So we start engaging with them fairly young and quickly. Plus the fact that we've got a great relationship with VIU, so from a schooling perspective, you can play football, you can go to university, or VIU has a trade school as well, so you can take your courses as an apprentice in woodworking or electrical work and still be able to play football. And that's a great advantage. So people wanting to stay home, it saves them money from that perspective. They can still go to school and they can still play football at a high level. So it works out well from in that regard. In fact, when we go recruiting, one of the big things is the fact that we do have a scholarship program. We do have accredited university and a trade school, so that helps a lot too.
You mentioned the scholarship program that the Raiders have, and like you said, you were the first. You're pretty much you were the pioneers in British Columbia doing that. So let's talk about the business end of the football team. Costs money to run it every year.
Oh, without a doubt.
I know we talk a lot. The budget is maybe higher than you would like, but it's not as big as you'd like. You'd love to bring more money in to make everything easier.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's the biggest struggle. Nanaimo isn't the biggest city in the world, so you're limited in terms of the number of people that you can go for sponsorships. It's something that we have to work on, and we consistently work on. I mean, other than getting players to field a team and be successful, the next biggest challenge is the fundraising, so we can help the players perform at their best levels and put a product on the field that everybody's happy with. It takes a lot of work. I mean, our number one item at every board meeting is, okay, where are we with fundraising? What are we doing in this regard? And just looking at the financial end of things. And I don't think it's something unique to Nanaimo. I think sports in general is looking at that. There's so many sports going after the same sponsors. You can't always just be the first in line all the time.
One of the, we were just talking inside before we stepped outside, the Caledonia Park.
Right.
The place everybody loves to hate, but it's a tough stadium to win in, and for all it's lacking, it's got its charms, but you're hoping that something's on the radar.
We are talking to the city right now for a redevelopment of it, and we've had very, very good discussions. I can't say too much at this point because what we are expecting to happen may not happen, but plans are afoot for a really unique and great facility there, and hopefully by 2020 we'll have it in at least being built or underway to being built. So we're very, very happy about that. And that helps too, because then with the lights and whatnot, we can host night games and we can do different variety of functions there as well to get more people to come out and watch games as well. Right now we're limited to some degree because of the lack of lights. We have to play at a certain time every Saturday. It's just the way it is, and Sundays are difficult, especially if you got teams coming from the lower mainland or the Okanagan or Kamloops, because getting ferries back and forth and getting to work and school on Mondays and stuff is difficult as well.
We'll wrap up, but let's, with President's Week, part of the goal is to put a face on the business aspect of the football team. You need sponsors, you need directors, you always need help. Let's Kabel Atwall take 15 seconds or 5 minutes, talk about just asking for volunteers and corporate support. Let's give a commercial for the VI Raiders.
Well, I'm not sure how great a commercial it will be, but I think you just summed it out right there. I mean, like any team that plays at the competitive level that we play in, you need help, you need support, you need sponsors. And I think the neat thing is that it's going to kids that are coming out here and busting their ass and trying to improve themselves, not only as football players, but as young men. They give a lot back to the community and stuff, and this is one way of helping them out in that regard. So, we'll welcome any help that we can get.
It's funny, you mentioned the young kids that come out here and bust their ass to make the commitment, and so many players do come from across the prairies. The one name that everybody knows is Andrew Harris.
Right.
I mean, he's your...
Here comes another one.
Here comes another plane. Well, wait. Andrew is, he's what I think every junior player thinks about. I want to be the next Andrew Harris, but
right.
He was such a generational player. They come along so rarely. That level of success is so rare. But there's so many stories of young men that have come from the prairies and have grown into young men in Nanaimo and have become better people for it. We talked about Josh. We talked about Curtis. Your other.
Yancey?
But your other coach that's on the staff.
Whitman?
So you got Whitman on the staff, the other deep beard. I can't remember, I'm drawing a blank now, I'm putting you on the spot. Anyway.
I don't know my own coaches.
but I guess what I'm saying is that the young men, there's so many stories about these young men and kids that maybe don't play football at the next level, but the young men they become living away from home, and they grow up quick and they do such great things post-football.
Right, and I think that's the great thing about the sport and junior football is you give the kids that opportunity. I mean, we look at the board and we see how hard we work, but that's nothing compared to the effort and the time that the kids put into playing this sport. So that gives us motivation to help them out. But getting back to your point, I mean, it'd be great to have some kid come out and we take care of them, but help them become men, young men, and then they're equipped to take on other challenges and bigger challenges, because football ends sooner or later anyways. You got to prepare for life, and I think that's one of the things that we try to do. The fact that we get so many coaches that were alumni and coming back is because that came from different areas, because they came there, they grew up, they got established in their lives, and now they're giving back. Every year we have more and more kids staying in Nanaimo as opposed to going back. I mean, I can understand from a weather perspective, but it's just neat because they're continuing their schooling and everything else there too, and then they get established in the community, and that's just only going to build us stronger as we go forward as well.
Yeah, as the older your team gets, the bigger base of your alumni.
Oh, exactly.
Kareem Mayer, that was the name I was looking for. I hope he's back on the staff.
Yeah, he is. Okay. He's our DC this year.
So I forgot about you, Kareem. So.
I was going through how many guys got beards, and just about all of them have beards.
They all have beards. The VI Raiders, I will not make any predictions on who is not going to win the BCFC championship this year, but I can tell you without a doubt the VI Raiders coaching staff would win a beard growing contest Not even close.
Yeah, and I'm the oldest, and I can't grow one. So where does that leave?
Okay. Well, we appreciate you doing this, Kabel. Much appreciated, and good luck to the Raiders in 2019.
Great, thank you.